It's time for Scripts and Scriptures Disclaimers. Jean Verhoeven here with some very important information. My panel and I just finished watching this film. Some people use this show to see if they want to see the movie, and some people watch the movie first and then listen to us. The list is available at wicxradio.org. If you're part of the first group, then beware, there are plot spoilers in the following discussion. We also have to tell you, while we think they are smart, witty, insightful, and profound, our opinions are solely ours and do not reflect the management, staff, or board of WICX or affiliated radio groups, or maybe even you. However, our panel is very proud of the results. We are not theologians or apologists, but we are movie fans and hope you are too. Enjoy. Ready? Lights, camera, action!
Take one. That clapboard tells us it's time for Scripts and Scriptures. I'm Jean Verhoeven. We will be watching spiritually inspired films and shows, discussing their quality, insight, value, and enjoyment. I'm so happy to welcome our panel, Susan Stevens, Charlie Saletti, Lloyd Kintz, and host of his own movie radio show, Daniel Saletti. This week is a film that kind of is a departure from what we usually do. First of all, it's R-rated. Second of all, it's based on a true incident. And it's a very difficult subject, but we're going to do our best. But I'd like to remind you that we're here to discuss the movie, not so much to debate the topic. The movie is Spotlight, and it's a 2015 American biographical drama film directed by Tom McCarthy and written by McCarthy and Josh Singer. The film follows the Boston Globe's Spotlight team, the oldest continuously operating newspaper investigative journalist unit in the United States, and its investigation into cases of widespread and systemic child sex abuse in the Boston area by numerous Roman Catholic priests. It is based on a series of stories by the Spotlight team that earned the Globe the 2003 Pulitzer Prize for Public Service. The film features an ensemble cast, including Mark Ruffalo, Michael Keaton, Rachel McAdams, and Stanley Tucci. It is received with widespread critical praise, with critics lauding the performance of the cast, the historical accuracy, and the screenplay. The film won numerous awards and was named one of the finest films of 2015 by various publications. Spotlight actually won the Academy Award for Best Picture, along with Best Original Screenplay, from 6 total nominations. In 1976, at a Boston police station, 2 policemen discussed the arrest of a Catholic priest, Father John Geoghegan, for child molestation. A high-ranking cleric talks to the mother of the children. The assistant district attorney then enters the precinct and tells the policeman not to let the press get wind of what happened. The arrest is hushed up, and the priest is released. In 2001, the Boston Globe hires a new editor, Marty Barron. Barron meets Walter Robbie Robinson, the editor of the newspaper's Spotlight team, that takes months to research and publish. After Barron reads a Globe column about a lawyer, Mitchell Garabedian, who says that Cardinal Bernard Law, the Archbishop of Boston, knew that John Geoghegan was sexually abusing children and did nothing to stop him, he urges the Spotlight team to investigate. Journalist Michael Resendez contacts Garabedian, who initially declines to be interviewed. Though he is told not to, Resendez reveals that he is on the Spotlight team, persuading Garabedian to talk. Initially, they are believing that they are following the story of one priest who was moved around several times. The Spotlight team begins to uncover a pattern of sexual abuse of children by Catholic priests in Massachusetts and an ongoing cover-up by the Boston Archdiocese. After the Boston Globe wins a case to have even more legal documents unsealed that provide the evidence of that larger picture, the Spotlight team finally begins to write the story, and they plan to publish their findings early in 2002. This is a very, very difficult topic, and let the record show, this show is not to solve, defend, or debate the sexual scandals referred to in this film. We are looking at a movie about it and its impact regarding the Boston Globe's breaking of the story. The picture received a 72% plus historical accuracy. This was mostly due to the compression of time and some of the order of the events. However, they were true events. Over time, there's been evidence the scandal is bigger and deeper than first reported. The focus has widened to not just look at pedophilia, but homopredation, both within the church ranks and between clergy and non-clergy. Please pray for the victims and those who have hurt them. If I hadn't been an engineer, I was going to be a journalist, and I'm sure an investigative reporter, because I know as an amateur genealogist, I love the hunt. That's the best part, and I would love to do the research. Now, none of us are New England natives except for Charlie, but you weren't even here at the time that this broke. What do you all think of the reaction of the newspaper staff?
The reaction at the beginning when they're first given the task of doing the story, as opposed to some story about police underestimating crime or whatever they were going to do?
Well, then and as the story just grew and grew and grew, and remember, they kept reminding us Boston is really a small town underneath it all, and it's all very connected. Were they right to want to pursue it or not pursue it? Was the new editor?
Their first reaction, I think, was that of reluctance, because they were a little afraid of alienating their readers, whom they knew were, in the Boston area, were largely Catholic.
53%
of over half.
The Globe subscribers. Yeah.
I think it didn't seem so much like a story because it was sort of business as usual.
That's a scary thought.
It had been going on before the movie introduced this 20-some years ahead of time that it had been happening. So nobody talked about it.
And they had actually published a couple of very brief articles in the past about it, but that was the end of it.
And I think that's why they maybe did the story, because they realized, hey, maybe there's something else here. And we only did like a little highlight story back in the day when it was first discovered. Maybe we should reconcile that and do a little bit of deeper digging.
Mm-hmm. And all of them, were raised Catholic.
Correct.
Yep.
So that's like looking into your family, and maybe you don't want to turn over that rock because you're going into the family, the church. So it's a little hesitation.
Now, do you think these reporters and also the district attorney, do you think they were afraid of the Roman Catholic Church? And if so, why do you think so?
Well, they were probably afraid not in the sense that the Roman Catholic Church would threaten them in any physical way, but that many, especially the lawyers, were all country club pillars of the community types, and so they would be, shunned from their lofty organizations if they went against the church.
And they all kind of were a little bit surprised when they basically, because it was an ongoing question when they first started to do this deeper digging. Do you want to sue the Catholic Church? You want to sue the Catholic Church? You want to sue the Catholic Church? And so I think they realized we're going to lose not only people that work here, but the 53% of the subscribers, and this might be the end of the Globe. There's a lot of at stake questions, and like I just said, they asked the suing question 1,000 times when they first started doing it.
We know that Boston is a very strong Irish community, Italian and other ones as well, but for decades or centuries they were very, very, very Irish. And it's almost like a mini Ireland in the sense that the Catholic Church in Ireland ended up with so much power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, or however that goes.
Right.
And
Even
the church has all but died in Ireland because so many things were brought to the forefront, and now it was happening again in Little Ireland, if you will.
Even their basketball team is Irish.
Even their basketball team is Irish.
Sort of.
So you get this new editor coming in from Florida. He doesn't know anything about Boston. I don't think he'd even been there. He's definitely not Irish, and he's definitely not Christian. He's Jewish. Not that should make any difference, but they like to keep bringing that out because everybody else was not Jewish. And so, what would you say was this new guy's, Barron was his name, what was the new editor's goal? Was he going... Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I see another phase, another facet of this, in that it was Y2K. The time was 2001. Technology turned a corner with the turn of the century. The speed of the technology got so much faster.
Right.
So we have a paper that was at risk because technology,
That's
they
right.
didn't know what was going to happen. And we seem to have an editor who has got a perception of maybe you won't need as many people to do the same story. The one place in there they mentioned putting a URL in the newspaper, which was very new to them.
High tech.
Now we've got a hyperlink. But I was impressed with this new editor because he was so aware of the times. In addition to, he picked up on a story that hadn't gone on, but it might have been different 20 years earlier or 20 years later.
Yeah,
it was the time of Y2K.
Right, and all the computers did work after 2000, but you're absolutely right, because they were really transitioning from the old way of doing things to the new way. He even mentions that the internet might put the classified department out of business, and when they said to go down and get the clippings of old stories, they meant it. They didn't mean even on microfiche for the most part. They were physical clippings out of old newspapers. That was their library, so to speak, or their internet, if you want.
So can I tweet that real quick, actually?
No. Anyway, but as far as the editor goes, do you think his goal? What was his goal? Was it good journalism? Did he have some sort of Jewish versus Christian angle that he was making a point, or was there's some sort of revenge to the whole thing?
I think religion can play a role in this for sure, but
For him? For the editor?
Well, let me explain. I mean, a religion can play a role, period, comma, break, but he also could have just been looking at it from a journalistic newspaper view. He may have realized that this story did not get the attention it should have, and that he wanted to break the story. He wanted people to know. I mean, it could have been related to him more. It could have been rabbis doing this. I mean, I don't think he cared if it were priests or not, because he wanted, in this case, the Catholics to know, hey.
He wanted a good story.
He was a good journalist.
He was a good journalist.
Guess what? This is happening, and it's happening right now with people you may know. Mm-hmm. So we want to let you know, if Father Joe is on the list, you may want to stay away from Father Joe. That's I think where he was going.
Okay, so this new editor, he goes to visit the Cardinal Bernard Law, of the infamous, I guess I should say. And they have as evidently was tradition for the new editor to go visit the Cardinal, which right there tells you the
hierarchy of the town,
and the grasp and the clench maybe that the church had on the town. And so they have this very lovely, cordial conversation. And what does he give him as a present as he's leaving? The Cardinal gives the Jewish editor a catechism book, all wrapped up and everything. All right, so what was the meaning of that?
Oh, that was you. To me, it's like, you know nothing, and I'm a cardinal, so I want to give you this book.
Ah.
It's also, it's just very clear that the church is the boss in this town, and that was the message that the Cardinal was trying to send, and not very subtly.
Not very subtly.
My question is, did he even know he was Jewish?
Oh, he knew everything.
He mentioned.
Oh, he did. Okay.
He knew everything.
I mean,
And he knew he was from New York and Miami
And I mean, like, not to joke around with the rating of the film, but it could have also been the Cardinals' way of, unfortunately saying, "Hey, new new Jewish leader of the Catholic paper, here's a F.U. kinda.
Whoa.
Here's a catechism.
Okay.
Catechism for you. Enjoy."
You mean try to school him?
Exactly. Enjoy. Read up. Convert.
Okay, moving right along. The power of the press, it's pretty amazing. And today, there's kind of a lack of the objectivity that's supposed to be in journalism, because they decide what we see and hear, and they can justify, by running a few paragraphs on page 30, they can say, "Oh yeah, we addressed that," or they put their retraction on page 30 or
Right.
40 or 50, and you never know that they found out they were wrong about something. But anyway, a tiny paper doesn't have the clout, even when they have the facts, and that was brought out. The lawyer had spoken to a smaller paper. Okay, do you think that this was just a hit piece against the church, or were they hoping, oh man, we're going to finally get our Pulitzer, or are they trying to save lives? I mean, don't get me wrong, journalism really is partly or mostly a business. Don't forget that. So what do you think were they just going after the church, or were they doing this for themselves? What do you think?
It's an impressive part of the movie that it really shows the people as hardworking newspaper people. I didn't get the impression at all that there was any thought of the Pulitzer. It just was business as usual. Mm-hmm. Dig in and go for as much detail as they could. And the movie also conveyed there's a general attitude of trying to make the community better, trying to have something that's important to the community, so they'll sell newspapers and stay on top that way. So that's my impression.
I think.
Yeah. Well, it seemed to me pretty clear that because they actually went and spoke to a number of the victims, and those who were willing to talk they were pretty moving in their descriptions of what happened to them and how it affected their lives. You get the impression that that's really what drove them along in this, not a desire for fame and glory or a desire to take down the church, but just to help the people who had been so damaged by this.
Get the word out, save lives, and then because they probably had the idea, or at least came across their brain saying, this is going to be a big story, the Pulitzer might have ended up being like a nice bonus or something.
Cherry on top?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they were at a mission at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Toward the end, they really cared about it.
That's right. I probably should have mentioned this in the beginning. I personally did not watch this film until just recently, even though it came out several years ago now, because I was terrified. I was afraid of language. I was afraid of graphic descriptions, and I don't take the language very well. However, the good news is it's not every third word like some movies, especially ones about Boston, but and the graphic descriptions are brief, and
they don't show you anything.
They don't show you anything, and the descriptions are brief, and they could have been a lot worse. And I know there's people on this panel who are worried about watching it, but I think it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Let's put it that way. Okay, so we've got the lawyer who's working for the diocese, or with the diocese, archdiocese, and it turns out that he's actually doing private mediation. In other words, they sit down with the diocese says, this is what we're going to do, and this is how much we're going to pay you, and here, sign this confidentiality agreement, and bye-bye. Versus filing it in a court, making it public, and so forth and so on. There was also under-the-table settlements Was this okay on one or both sides? You know, the diocese as well as the victims. Was this okay on such a serious issue?
Well, I can see how someone would be a little, well, let's frankly, disgusted with the whole thing. So they may not want to share it out in the world. And so maybe in a way these private meetings are just what they need. Get it off their chest, but not get it to the rest of the world.
And the flip side of that?
Well, the thing that was really not okay was, you know, there's nothing necessarily wrong, as they stated in the movie, that in many of these cases, the statute of limitations had already passed. These were,
It was only 3 years. If you're an 11-year-old, they expect you to report it within
right.
3
Now,
years.
yeah, many states have changed that since, but at the time, there was no way to criminally charge the abusers. But what was really wrong was that it seemed that the lawyers representing the victims were also working for the church. And that was the part that, it's mediation is a reasonable way to handle things, but when your representation is actually working as a double agent, then that's not really fair at all.
Double agent, that's a good word. Yeah. It went so far, part of the journalism was how they tracked them down pre-internet days. They literally had to go through the annual publication, which was like a phone book almost, of where each priest was assigned and their position and so forth. And how they got to the bottom of it was they noticed a trend that there were some that were unassigned. There were some that had taken leave because of an emergency response to something. There were some classified as absent on leave. And all of a sudden they put 2 and 2 together, or, well, 87 and 87 together, I guess, and realized that there was a trend and how these priests were being moved around, then classified as inactive, then moved around, then classified. Okay, so did the church have the right to classify inactive priests this way in these cases? I mean, as far as I know, these books were available to the public, or at least...
In the movie, they had them in the basement of the Globe, right?
Right. I don't know how they got them, but...
Well, I think they collected them over the years because they were
could
just...
be. It probably came out every year.
Maybe they published them themselves. It's a publication from the archdiocese, isn't it?
Were they saving face for the archdiocese? Were they saving face for the individual priest? Were they saving face for the victims?
Seemed like just a convenient way of recording things.
To account for all their priests.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Catholic Church is very good about keeping records.
Mm-hmm.
When my children had to go to confirmation, I just contacted St. Matthew's Cathedral, and boom, they sent it. And they had a paper, they sent a little paper Xerox of the, baptism.
Right.
So they're very good at keeping records, and they had to count for every priest. So if the priest is not active, they had to put a different label on it.
Yeah,
So.
a very different label. Okay, one of the greatest lines in the whole movie. True or false? If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to abuse one. True or false?
So true.
What did they mean by that?
Because for every abused child, there was a parent not noticing. Or neighbors, or other priests, or, in the community.
I have not been in their shoes, so... you don't know what you're going to do. However, if I was going to, hypothetically, if I had a child, and I don't care if it was 1948, 1978, or 2008, if I had a child who was abused, and I went to the I wouldn't go to the parish. I wouldn't go to the bishop. I would have gone right to the police and or the media. But the point is, no priest is going to sit me down, or bishop, or archbishop, or cardinal, and tell me, now, Jean, you don't want to put the child through it. You don't want to put the family through it. You don't want to put the parish through it. Think of what you'll do. It was a mistake. Don't worry, it's not going to happen again. And you don't want to put your child through a trial. And well, yeah, I do, Father. Sorry, because it's just compliant behavior all the way up the line and then all the way back down again.
That's true, but they made a point in the movie that the kids that were targeted were from families that didn't have someone to speak for them. So
Often, but not always.
Not always. There
Not
were a
out of the
few.
thousands of victims.
There were a few, but
The mother of 7.
yeah, they were either very very large families, they were poor families, and usually missing a parent, or under some sort of already getting help from the church one way or another. They
Or
were
free tuition for the
yeah,
schools.
or, yeah,
Certain
so
families got free
they
tuition.
were definitely
parochial
in a
schools.
leveraged position, and so it's not as easy as saying no, I wouldn't put up with that. It would have been harder, and they knew it.
Well, that's true. I mean, like every good Irish Catholic family, we had a priest in our family. My grandmother's pastor was always dropping in. He used to ride his bike, and then he got too old, and but he was pastor for, I don't know, 150 years or something, it seemed, and
Wow.
he was always dropping in. And we had a couple of priests that frequented our home. It boggles the mind. I read an article, I think it was in Time magazine, I'm pretty sure, where this one victim was describing how the parish priest had a standing dinner date at the house every week. And I don't know, Tuesday night he'd come for dinner or something. And then he'd say, the two boys would go to bed, and as he was leaving, he'd say to the mother, can I just go say goodnight to the boys, give them a blessing? I hate to tell you what was going on in the bedroom before he left. I mean, right under the mother's nose, and of course the boys didn't know what was happening, I don't think. And I mean, but the grooming, I think the grooming is almost creepier than,
Right.
or at least as creepy as the act. It's really not good. But I love that line. If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to abuse one, because there's so many parties played
But I
along.
agree with you, not maybe putting a child through a trial, but I'd be waiting at the back door with the baseball bat.
There you go. There you go.
I would be doing.
Or worse,
So
or worse, the lawyers that saw that that they were defending against dozens of these,
I know.
and then just saying, well, I'm covered by this agreement, I can't say anything.
Yeah.
But he did send.
And one of them cracked.
Yeah.
But it
His
took
conscience,
many
right.
years.
So basically, the bottom line is never to get on your bad side. You're going to be with a baseball bat.
There,
Central Valley girl.
There you go. There was, while they were talking about all these layers of compliance, there was a reference. One of the reporters said, "Oh, good Germans." What did that mean, and how did it apply in this case?
I picked up on that with a theme that was subtle and just really goes with it, and they didn't go too far with it. But in my experience, like in the last 10 years, 3 times I've been down to D.C. to the Jewish Museum,
Oh, we're
the
members there.
Holocaust
Yeah,
Museum.
yeah.
And several of their exhibits, they modify them a little bit. They make this strong point that there were people that knew what was going on and they didn't do anything about it. And I think one time I even heard somebody say, well, Hitler didn't kill any Jews. It was the fact that people knew things were going on and they didn't do
Allowed
anything
it to
about it.
happen.
And as I heard this line, it just a parallel, the theme is
I think it was a
enhanced.
direct reference, actually.
Right.
To Nazis, for sure, yeah.
Well, to the fact that that poem about first they came for the such and such, and then
Right.
they came for the so and so, and then there was nobody they came for me, and there was nobody. Same idea, I think.
Or what's that saying? Who was it? For evil to exist, good people
Yeah, just have to stay silent.
it has to say sign or something.
Right, that's right. That's right. Okay, so we got an awful lot of players in this story. Who is worse? The priests, the lawyers, the press, the diocese, the bishops, or even the parents?
Could it be D, all the above?
Like the editor said at the end, in the darkness, you don't know what's going on. Put the light on, the blame is
The
spread.
spotlight.
The spotlight.
I think that the takeaway is, or one of the takeaways might be that parents really need to be on top of what their kids are what the environment their kids are into, and
Sadly.
it's very high risk to just assume that if you drop them off at school and pick them up at night that everything's going to be okay. And
One line that all these people kind of reminds me of in the movie is they say we're just looking for a few bad apples here. It's not really just a few, it's an entire orchard.
Oh, you're talking, this is the village.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's an entire orchard. It's
You're
not
right.
just a couple priests, a lawyer, and some parents that didn't pay attention. It's everybody. It's the entire orchard, and it's all gone bad.
Well, one of the victims in the movie
Right.
said, it was part of this grooming process where first they joke around and then they take it to another level. Can you imagine a Catholic priest sharing a porno magazine with you?
That
But
shocked me.
but that's now, like he said, now he and I had a secret.
Yeah.
It was bonding is what it was.
Yeah.
Plus, you don't want to tell anybody because you don't want to get Father in trouble because everybody loves Father. And
Who would believe you?
who would believe you? Exactly. But that was a very insightful thing when he said, and now we shared a secret. And I thought, oh boy. oh boy.
And not a good one.
Right. Even now, there are states and towns and counties that order law enforcement not to arrest priests, just turn them over to the diocese quietly. Is this right? Is this fair? Is this moral?
Well, I don't think it's even legal. But
And it's not legal, but it's happening right
But-
now. Was it better that journalists or fallen away Catholics were unafraid of the diocese, or outsiders, or would you say a Jewish editor, or good Catholics who brought the story to light? Remember, the second time. The first time, for some reason, they closed their eyes to it. Maybe they thought it was that one bad apple. It's interesting that that's what it took. Was it better the journalists or the fallen away Catholics who didn't fear the cardinal, or maybe it was the Jewish editor? I'm not sure, but it was a good thing that it was brought to the story the second time, or it's brought to light the second time. Who do you think led the way on that one? The second round.
Well, bringing it to spotlight actually for the second time. But no. I'll open it by saying this. I graduated with a journalism degree, and I don't think this story or the film was ever brought up once, which is kind of surprising now that I look back, because I was always taught, go get your story, no matter what the cost is. Interview who you must, get the sources you must, get the details you have to get, and bring back the story. Everybody I knew, all the professors and stuff like that, that's what they did, and that's how they got their stories done. Now, I think it was, again, just like how the editor was looking at it from a journalistic view, the journalists were doing that as well. I don't think necessarily being the fallen away Catholics had as much as a meaning to it as just trying to get the story out there. They knew that they wanted to sort of right a wrong here, not only because, hey, look, we want to right the wrong of we only did a highlight story back in the day, let's bring some more detail now, but they want to right the wrong of some of the people who were abused, because you saw at the end of the movie the amount of people that were calling in when the story was out was tremendous.
Think of the people the victims that had hidden it for literally decades
the person
and
from
decades,
Maine.
and they get the chance. They see the story, they see the phone number. They finally have the courage to pick up the phone because they know they're not alone now.
So I don't think they were afraid at all, because you saw Resendez, was that Ruffalo's character. Mm-hmm. He stopped at nothing to talk to that lawyer, Stanley Tucci, I believe it was. He stopped at nothing. He followed him in an elevator, and that's when he revealed he was part of Spotlight. And even when he was meeting him the first time, you could hear Tucci yelling from his office.
Right.
But Ruffalo just snuck right in, no appointment.
It seems like in Boston, the if you said you were from Spotlight, that did carry some weight.
Yeah.
People were impressed with that, and they were more willing to help you, I think.
So they weren't afraid. They
Unfor-
just wanted to get the story.
Unfortunately, these investigative reporting teams are very few exist anymore. They've gone the wayside of many of the newspapers themselves.
And there were only 4 of them, which meant they had to work even harder.
Of course, today with the internet, you probably do it with 2 or 1.
And
but
they even had internet, sort of.
But they had
back
like a
then.
research department clipping, getting
right,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Getting those clippings.
But the thing is, you need the combination. The Jewish editor kind of could see there's a good story in it.
Yeah.
But you needed the fallen away Catholics because they knew the church. There's a diocese.
Knew
They
the drill.
knew the hierarchy.
Right.
And they knew it would be a perfect story for, quote, Catholicville there with...
Right. But they knew the inside.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And they all knew priests themselves, and
The one went to school there.
Yeah.
So they knew.
And that's another way they could get in-depth details of the story, because they were fallen away Catholics, so they were Catholic. They knew people in the
they
community,
had contacts, and
they could just slip right in with, and that goes for journalism and pretty much every job you do. It's all about who you know. It's all about connections and links to people you know. So
they were embedded journalists.
Exactly.
That's where they
Exactly.
were.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw it as sort of a really auspicious joining of the insiders and the outsiders. The team at the paper being the insiders, but it took the outsider to break the paradigm of, oh, that's not a story. After all, they'd been hearing about this for quite a long time. They just buried it in the metro and just said, there's nothing to see here. So that was their first assumption. Oh, that again. It's not a story. We've tried this before. It never goes anywhere. Let's work on something else. And it took the outsider to say, no, I think you need to try a little harder. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that they were trying to cover for the church. Far from it. They had no emotional attachment to it, and maybe that was an item that was necessary too. But they were just stuck in the old paradigm of, oh, that's not a story.
Well, you notice though, the editor himself insisted they don't go. They were not gunning for law necessarily. Law being the cardinal, not legal. The law. He wanted to take down the system because he knew that was even bigger and globally.
A comment on the movie that as our dialogue has moved along here, it's been building. The movie is very well done. You learn from the beginning to the end, from less detail to more detail. It's very well developed. This is a high quality movie with very, very good script, and they reveal things in steps just like you would. Mm-hmm. You have the feeling that you understand the process that they're
a little
going
bit of language,
through,
but
so
it was appropriate. It was actually, it was realistic as opposed to when they just throw it in for the heck of it.
You learn as it goes along, and it's just a very high quality movie.
There were 2 interesting characters that we haven't really talked about. They mentioned, at one point they were talking about victims. They prefer survivors, I guess. And somebody said, well, yeah, those are the ones that are still alive. We forget the high suicide rate and all the mental illness that this can cause, post-trauma stress disorder and depression, etc., etc. However, interestingly, we were introduced to a former or retired priest who he himself was a little loony bins, pardon the expression. That's not very technical, but the reporter goes to the door. She's been searching out all these priests, and she finally finds one, and he's like as gentle and kind.
A child.
Yes,
He's a child.
Innocent.
He's a
Of course,
child.
I'll
He's a
speak
child.
to you. And then he had the gall to say, "I didn't rape anybody. I didn't have any self-satisfaction." It's like,
But yeah, I fooled around. Yeah, I did it.
what? And then his sister grabs him and pulls him back inside the house. But you could see where, if talk about king of denial, a river in Egypt. He was so out of touch with reality, and I think a lot of that happened to the victims. And we should also acknowledge, again, not victims, survivors. The founder of SNAP, survival, or what is it,
Survivors.
who, something about abused by priests.
Abused
but
by priests.
Those who were abused by priests, but Survivors Network
Network.
of those who were abused by priests. And he had he also had sent a lot of the information to the paper years before, just like the lawyer did, and it was like right over their head. It didn't take. Talk about a reality check. This guy never gave up, and I know that organization is still very strong today. Frightening, but thank God that they were there. We may not have enough respect for the church now as a community because, we're down to, 20% who attend, 25% who attend, and 70% of those don't believe in the real presence, or at least we don't have enough respect for the church teachings. But pre-1980, do you think there was too much respect for the church? Is that even a possibility? At least seen through the eyes of the investigation? When you can see what the power here, and again, I refer to Ireland, the power that the church, and of course, centuries ago, they had power in all the European countries, or most of them, but...
things were a little different pre-1980.
Right.
I can't be quite sure exactly when, but some churches I'm sure were still doing Latin and stuff like that.
Not too many then.
Not
There's been a
1980.
return to that recently, in the last decade or so. But this divorce was, by the 1980s, the divorce was it had lost its taboo. It was very socially acceptable. It was very widespread amongst Catholics. Now you got birth control. Now you got the sexual revolution. Now you got free love. Now you got abortion.
But authority back then.
Yeah.
Because I remember my grandparents would come in the room, we would have to stand up. It was authority not to the church, but your family, to school. And there was a sense of...
More respect and dignity. Eh?
Right,
For the
and there
authority.
were some parts of the country, Boston was one of them, Philadelphia was another, where the church was very much part of the community. It was your school, it was your sports team.
Probably
It
New
was-
York.
your social
It
life.
was your entire social life. You were a member of the Knights or some other organization.
There was
associated with
bingo
the church.
nights.
And they were everything associated with the community. So it wasn't that there was a lot of power and a lot of respect, and it was all sort of back channel kind of things. But it was, and because the communities were tight, you knew them. They were all people.
Isn't it Philadelphia or is it Boston? I think it's Philadelphia. They used to ask you not what neighborhood are you from, what parish are you from.
Yeah, and but Philadelphia and Boston were very similar
They were
in
like
that
cousins,
way.
yeah.
That they were very other places where the church was a little more dispersed. I think that it didn't hold sway as much.
But you were assigned a parish. If you
That's-
lived there,
Well,
you
it
couldn't
was-
go to
It
another
was
parish.
based on your neighborhood,
Right.
Yeah.
So you were basically, that was your life.
My mother got thrown out of a parish church just a couple miles from our house, but it was a different parish, and she was there for, I don't know what she was there for, confession or something, and the pastor came down the aisle and said, "You don't belong in this parish." I couldn't believe, of course, I would have gone right to the bishop, but that doesn't matter,
Yeah. See, I was talking about authority.
Talk about power.
Yeah.
And that was
Power.
just the pastor, and of course my mother being, of
Oh,
the
no.
30s and 40s adult era, she
Hightailed out.
she kind of crawled out, I think,
Oh.
but
I'm surprised she didn't stick her heels into the ground.
no, not when it came to that. No, because you have to remember, in those days, the parish priest was like a god himself.
And that parish priest can decide whether they would marry you or not.
Yeah.
Or bury you.
Right.
Bury
There,
you.
that's, yeah.
Baptize
right.
your kid. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. No, it was. I think I mentioned this on another show that when they were held in such high esteem, just a little bit better than everybody, closer to God, that when I think it was, I don't know, the 70s probably, people started hugging their parish priest. Oh my God, my mother was scandalized. That was not a good thing. Anyway, is the reason there wasn't a revolt in the church after this happened, other than, okay, there were many leaving. That's true. They revolted with their feet. But is it the same reason that 98% of all Catholics never hit the streets over abortion? Is it that they just don't care? Is it that they don't see all these things as wrong? Is it the old, it's bad for others, but when it hits my family, I have to protect them? Is it someone else's problem? Will there always be collateral damage in society, so we should just put up with it? I don't know.
I don't understand the last question.
Well, okay, so, if you've got a victim of incest and they have to have an abortion, well, or, oh, gee, we got a couple victims of a bad apple priest. Oh, gee. They even mentioned that in the movie, something about, just a few, is it worth all the bad publicity and getting everybody riled up? Well, yeah, maybe.
So you're saying, do you think, so what you're asking is, do you think that this whole thing was maybe like a giant spark for all these things to continue?
Why shouldn't it have been a spark for a revolt? But despite things like abortion, gay marriage, Catholics who don't know their faith, are they just going to church to say, oh, check that box, I went to church today, but they're not living their faith? They're supposed to, there's a quote in the Bible about the church militant. You're supposed to get out there and stand up for what we believe in, and where is everybody?
I'm aware of a change in family values, a shift, a paradigm that we've had since the 60s and the big
That's
Great
for sure.
Society and whatever that would cause things like this. And also there's something in human nature that these animal farm situations just don't go away. When we get groups of people, there are things that happen. To me, I see the shift in family values as being very significant. That isn't really tied into the movie. They're not. That's not
okay.
a topic
okay.
in the movie.
We'll
That's one of the things that I see that.
We'll go back and pick on my
things.
mother again. Post-Vatican II, she was very traditionalist, didn't like Vatican II, liked her Latin Mass and her Gregorian and so forth and so on. And every time there was a new change, which seemed like every week there in the 60s and 70s, she would rant and complain about it. And I looked at her, being the teenager or whatever I was at the time, and said, well, why didn't you do something about it? Why didn't you change? Why didn't you fix it? Why didn't you do something? It's the church. It's not a democracy. I couldn't do that. What would the neighbors say? Type of thing. And I guess that's my same question here. When this broke in the Globe, granted it was winter in Boston, you didn't want to go out, but why weren't there just hordes of people outside the diocesan offices demanding action? Instead, they either just never went back to church, which is very sad because that's their soul and that's their fault.
Well, why weren't there crowds of people protesting at the front door to the Globe either?
And remember, they were expecting
They
that,
were expecting
but they
that.
weren't.
That's the thing, and there weren't.
They agreed with them.
Exactly.
But that's why they should have been going to the diocese and saying, hey, what's up with this?
But to your point about did this spark something? Did this become a ripple effect? Was the whole story, The Rock, and then all this stuff that you said, I wouldn't say it was a spark because, like you said, it was happening before all this happened. There was all the free love, blah, 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 blah. But I won't say maybe it didn't help because it's still going on today, and even the priest thing is still going on today.
So how can you say it helped?
No, I'm saying it didn't help.
Oh, it didn't help.
It didn't
Okay.
help. It
Okay.
didn't help. Because
You're right. There are still cover-ups for priests. There are still these crazy treatment centers that really just takes them out of the parish. It doesn't really do anything for them.
what I compare it to is you rip off a Band-Aid, but the wound is still there. So it's like a double pain. Ripping off a Band-Aid is painful, but then the wound that you covered up is still there, and that's still painful.
Do you think Catholics up to the 60s or 70s were basically bred or trained or schooled to be wimps, though? I mean, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be standing up for your faith, and all of a sudden, here was your opportunity to... I just don't understand why we don't see more people on the streets for this type of situation, for the right to life people. I mean, they've got to care. They've got to see that it's wrong.
Well,
I just don't get
the
it.
one thing that struck me is that one of the victims or survivors, there was a telephone conversation where he said he still had his faith. He didn't go to, but he still had his.
Oh, he didn't
faith.
go to church, but he
still
called
had
himself
his
a Catholic or
faith.
something.
And that journalist thought he'd always go back.
That's right.
So there's a seed of faith that they separate the hierarchy of a church than their faith in Jesus and God and the Trinity.
I mean, don't get me
So
wrong.
it's
I'm not
a whole-
asking them to tar and feather the cardinal,
Right.
even
Well,
but no, don't go there. But the point is, and I know it isn't a democracy, but nonetheless, they should have made their voices heard, I believe, and I don't think that happened. And maybe they just thought it was somebody else's job, or it didn't happen in my family, type of thing.
Well,
I don't know.
in New Hampshire, I remember Union Leader, they had all these people a signature to do something about our bishop.
I think, I think
People
there
put their
were
names on
there
that.
were a lot of and the church for about 3.5 weeks instituted all kinds of programs where now if you're a lay person you can't go into a Catholic school without getting training and all this
Right.
kind of stuff, even though the lay people were not the problem.
Right, right.
And
You're right. You're
you
right.
know, and you know, so
I don't know. There was a bishop that said it's the laity's responsibility to fight abortion and fight all this other stuff. And it was like, wait, back the truck up. I don't think you're right.
Well, it's stuff like that. I mean, the bishop can say what he likes, but I guess in order for there to be a revolt, there has to be pressure. Okay, so people revolt against governing authorities because they are left no other place to turn. Okay, what's easier to say? Well, you know what? These Baptists don't do that, and they believe in Jesus. And
That's
if
good
you're,
enough.
yeah, I'll go over there. So what's
we're-
easier?
We're taught that the church will always, always, always survive. So why did everybody just turn? Not everybody. Many people turn tail and go. Did they not have enough faith in God and in their church that it would? You may end up in the catacombs at some point. No joke. But I said that to you on Sunday. They gave out devotional books of Catholic prayers, and I said, "Here,
Oh, no.
here, hold on to this, because someday you might be in the catacombs and
With
you
the
might need it."
flashlight.
Yeah, right. One last hard question: if your job is to defend the, as they put it, the scumbags, especially of this magnitude, and you don't. Do you stay in your job? In other words, those lawyers who were kind of doing double duty, double agent, you called them, and they kept saying over and over again, "I was just doing my job. I was just doing my job." Okay, I suppose somebody's got to do the job, but do you?
Well, those
Should
lawyers
you should you stay in your job?
Those lawyers in particular were violating both moral and legal obligations because they were not representing the interests of their clients, but the interest of of the shadow client, the church, who was probably in one way or another compensating them for their interest, whether it was in social networking or something else.
Reminds me of the
And,
ambulance chasers, Get
Yeah,
another.
well, I mean,
Definitely.
it was worse than the ambulance chasers, who are only in it for themselves and just want to boost claims for their clients. But these guys were actually trying to minimize claims in order to save the church money and to placate the victims. Mm-hmm. Telling them, well, that's the best you're going to get, and they were hardly representing their interests. and
We never-
and so that part, that sort of conflicted thing, it's actually not legal for them to be doing that, and yet they were.
But you're right, it was immoral and unethical.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know,
It
we
was just
we never find out about the lawyer Mitchell Garabedian, who was filing, what was it, 84 cases or something, all individually,
Right.
not class action, which I thought was great. He says, I'm Armenian or Armenian descent, but they're not usually, at least Roman Catholic. They would be Eastern Rite or Orthodox.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was interesting because he probably wasn't even Catholic, and he was doing this because he saw that it was wrong. As the movie progressed, we learned through Phil Saviano, who was the head of that victims' rights group, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, whose members are interviewed by the Globe reporter Sasha Pfeiffer. The team is led to widen their search to 13 priests. They learned through Richard Sipe, who was a former priest and who worked at trying to rehabilitate pedophile priests. He was a priest. He was a psychotherapist or psychiatrist, and at this point he was also an ex-priest. But that according to his experience over decades, 50% of priests are not celibate, though most are in relationships with other adults. He also surprises the journalist that his findings would suggest that their estimate of the number of pedophile priests is low. It was the 13 they were looking at, and that there should be approximately 90 abusive priests in Boston, or 6%. Through their research, they develop a list of 87 names and begin to find their victims to back up their suspicions. And ultimately, they did a great thing for those victims because they were able to come out of the shadows and tell their stories. This movie was a little harder than some of our lighter fare, but I think it was an important one to watch, and it was certainly interesting to see how an organization like the Globe put the story out there and peeled back the layers like an onion. So, for Scripts and Scriptures, this is Jean Verhoeven. May the angels protect you and heaven accept you. See you next time.